Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the June 30th, 2015 special board meeting. We begin each meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, so if you could stand, please. I promise you there is a flag here, for those who can't see on the screen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A few housekeeping issues before I get going with introductions. Exits are at both sides of the arena here. In case of emergency, we're going to exit in an orderly fashion. We're not going to use the elevator. Bathrooms are to my left. This is a man wake. And silence your cell phones. If you have your cell phones on, please silence them at this time. Introductions. My name is Wayne Platt Jr. I'm the chairman of the planning board. We also have Vice Chairman John Dwyer Jr., members Charles Polacco, Robert Jacobson, Mary Jo Wilshire, and Jonathan Korn. And we also have City Planner Sue Cahill and Assistant Planner Kyle Haber. We're here tonight as an informational meeting to provide the public with an overview of RUPCO's proposal to reutilize the property located at the former Mid-City Lanes. This time, at the end of the presentation, we may have time for questions, if time permits. But I want to assure the public that this isn't the last stop in this process. We still have our public hearing scheduled for our next regular meeting, which is July 13th. So the public will still have the ability for input at that time. We have a good turnout tonight. I appreciate you folks coming out. At this time, I'd like to turn the mic over to the Executive Director of RUPCO, Mr. Kevin O'Connor.
Well, let Scott start.
Oh, sure. Scott Dutton, here, architect.
How you doing?
Thanks, Wayne. So most of you know my story, but for the benefit of those that may be seeing this later, I want to start out just to connect the dots, what this project means to me, to my family, and share some insight into the history of Midtown, as I know. My wife and I purchased a 28,000 square foot abandoned warehouse in Midtown in 1999. We moved into that abandoned warehouse, and most of my colleagues were pretty sure that I had lost it, that I was completely crazy. It was raining and snowing in the building when we bought it. In the neighborhood, as those of you that have lived in Kingston will remember, was rough. But I came up here after studying architecture in Brooklyn, and I saw it happen in Brooklyn. I saw it happen in Queens, saw it happen in Boston, in Philadelphia, in Maryland, and all up and down the eastern seaboard. It's an old story. And so we didn't hesitate. You know, this was a huge opportunity for us. Things languished in Midtown for a little while. We had 2008 when things came to a halt. We took our business from 1 employee in 1997 to 8. We've been successful in this community, and the vast majority of our projects are adaptive reuse projects here in the city of Kingston. So I'm here tonight as a project architect, but I'm also here tonight as a stakeholder, as a property owner in Midtown, and I can honestly say that I believe in what's happening in Midtown. Tomorrow, the first tenants at the Lakes Mills project will move in, and over the last year, private developer after private developer, some repeat clients of ours, some new clients of ours, have come to our office and said, I read about this project, I heard about this thing happening in Kingston, I'm looking at this building, I'm interested in this, will you take a look at it for me? And it's unbelievable what that message says to private investors when they see a project like the Lakes Mills project come online. I can tell you that in the last month, there have been 4 serious developers that have either gone to contract or made offers that have been accepted on properties in the Midtown area that we'll be bringing to the planning board in the coming months. And every one of them has said to me, it's because I think something's happening here in Kingston. I wasn't sure, I heard some things, I wasn't sure, but because of that message that the Waste Mills Project has sent, it's given them confidence that now might be a good time to invest in Midtown. So as I take you through this presentation, and I will be very brief, this is the exact same presentation that we made to the planning board 2 months ago. I know that there are some people that feel like we're moving very fast, but these projects take time to develop. We have structural engineers, we have civil engineers, we have building science consultants associated with this project, and it takes time to put them together. But we don't want anybody to think that we're rushing this project. We're here tonight for this public presentation voluntarily. This is not part of the normal planning board review process. This is here as a public information meeting so that everyone knows what the goals and objectives of the project are. I just want to show one more thing before I hand it over to Kevin, and then I'll take you through the presentation. A number of our clients and colleagues have approached me and said, what is this affordable housing thing? Kevin's going to talk about that more. And there's a picture that pops into many people's heads when you hear that. Well, I graduated in '94. I came up here shortly thereafter. Got my license in '97. I was practicing for almost 10 years before I made enough money that I couldn't live here. So the face of the people that live in the Waste Mills project, the face of the people that would be eligible to live in this project, as Wayne Platt said at the last planning board meeting, that's a starting salary for a firefighter. That's employees at M&E Manufacturing, at Monster Studios. Richard's here, I don't know what your employees make, but there are people in my office that are eligible. Just about everybody in the retail arena around here is eligible. This is about 2/3 of the population of the city of Kingston that would be eligible to live in one of these apartments. I was with Dennis Doyle, the county planner, about 2 weeks ago, and I said, what's the vacancy rate look like in Ulster County? I remember at one point it was 98% occupancy, 99% occupancy. So there were a few apartments out there, but not that many. And those that were available, most of them weren't safe. He said the vacancy rate in Ulster County is hovering around 1 or 2%. So there's an incredible need for rental housing. There are a lot of young professionals. A young woman, a landscape architect who I met, who's working for the Local Economies Project, who lives in Midtown, renter. I said, well, how do you get around? How do you like the neighborhood? She said, I ride my bike. They chose to move up here from Brooklyn because they wanted to be in an urban setting, and they wanted to be able to walk to a coffee shop, to walk to get food, walk to entertainment. And there are more and more people that are interested in living in an urban area. For me, it was a no-brainer. But I'm telling you that we meet these people every day. They work in your community, and look around. Many of you would be eligible to rent an apartment here. So, Kevin, I'm going to hand it over to you, and then I'll take folks through the architecture.
Thanks, Scott. Good evening, everyone. So I'd like to start at the beginning as to where this story started for us. So it was May of 2003 when the town board appointed Affordable Housing Committee called me from Woodstock. Oh, wait a second, that's an old story. Now, I guess it was December 2014 when Ev Mann called and said, Kev, can I come over in 2 minutes? I want to talk to you about something. And Ev came over and talked about the fact that the Center for Creative Education was looking for a new place. The building that they were in no longer was adequately housing them. They were looking for some new space, and could we maybe help them look for a building or an opportunity? And he had been looking a little bit around at some of the availabilities. We looked a little bit. In February, I came back with Greg Swansea and talked again about their need to relocate, to find something close to Midtown so that they can continue their important work and mission. And so we started to look a little bit harder. We looked at the Kingston site first. And I remember driving over there one night about 7:30, driving all around, taking a look at the site at various angles, marking axes, that kind of thing. I think that site, as a potential development site, is truly hampered by the gas station that sits adjacent to the site. But in doing so, we noticed that the bowling alley site was pretty new, and that it was for sale. And as I drove around the site that night and saw the opportunity that site presented, I was quite amazed. It fronts on both the Cedar and Greenkill. It has some on-site parking. The bowling alley had closed in June of 2014. Dave was able to sell most of the equipment, all the bowling lanes, so it's no longer a bowling alley. The lanes are gone. So we made contact with the Ferraros and were able to reach a deal. And the opportunity really became the idea that there was some interesting civic, the Center for Creative Education, needs for some space that we could couple with, what we always lead with, which is the need for affordable housing. And we could combine those two in a new building, take down the bowling alley, which we would describe now as a nondescript, non-historic, one-story building. This seems to
Hold it,
Yeah.
More to an angle.
Excuse me, Clark. That we could take that building down and start new with some new construction. So I want to talk more about the project, but before I do, I'd like to, we've met a couple of other folks that we're talking to. Another interesting idea for some civic space, again, space that's not meant to compete with the retail space that's on Broadway. We met Cale Capaccio and his group, the Hudson Valley Tech Meetup, who meets every other month at the Kirkland. And just 3 weeks ago, the last meetup of the Tech Hub was there. 90 some odd techies were at the Kirkland. County Executive Mike Hine came to greet them. There was 3 presentations from folks that are involved in technology and creating businesses here that I had no idea about. And so talking to Cale about the need and potential to create an incubator space for techies here in Kingston in this building. So at this point, I'm going to invite up Ed first, and then Cale just to talk a little bit about their space use at this site. Ed? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to see such a big turnout for this. As Kevin said in the backstory, those of you who aren't familiar with Center for Creative Education, we're based over on Railroad Avenue, and we're dedicated to Midtown Kingston, the city of Kingston. We're home of the Percussion Orchestra of Kingston and Energy Dance Company. We celebrated our 25th anniversary last fall, and we have a thriving after-school program based in Midtown. And what the impetus for this whole project is kind of mentioned was that we were just bursting at the seams. We have so many kids in the program now. It's a really big problem to have, but we cannot accommodate all the uses that we want and the expansion that we foresee in the future. We are huge fans of RUPCO and the work that they do in the community, and that's why we approached them about this to begin with, because we're not in the construction business, and we want to focus on arts and education. Having spent so much time in Midtown, And I agree with Scott. I think that there's really an energy of revitalization that's going on here. So it's very exciting. So we're committed to being a part of that. I think this project has tremendous potential, I think, for our entire community. And I'm looking forward to working with the city and with RUPCO and all of you to make it happen.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. I'd like to invite up Cal Capaccio with the Evolver Media, who's the co-founder of the Hudson Valley Tech Hub Meetup, to talk a little bit about potential for a tech incubator at the proposal. Cal?
Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Cale. I've lived in Kingston. We first moved here from across the river about 15 years ago. I found a beautiful home and a wonderful business community in uptown Kingston. We had just started a multimedia production company and software company. We were probably about 6 or 7 people back then, and we saw a community that we could be a part of and that would provide us with the kind of walkable city where we could live and work in the same community, and there were great restaurants and there was an arts community. And I think anyone who's lived here for 15 years or more, probably even longer, can say that it's really become so wonderful over the past decade. There's so much progress in these areas. The city it's our city, right? We're all responsible for making this wonderful place to live. And I think that that's been getting out nationally in many ways. Many people here this evening have attested to that. And in the tech community, which I have a company that's been around for 10 years, and we've grown slowly over time, again, because people want to live in this community if they can do the type of work that we do. And we've encouraged people to slowly do that, and they've bought homes and they've moved here. And then a couple of years ago, my business partner and I, together with a couple of other folks across the river, said, there's no tech meetup here in the Hudson Valley. If you're not familiar with the concept of a tech meetup, it was started by New York Tech Meetup, which has 40,000 people in the city. It's where most of the technologists and the tech companies work together. They come together to talk to each other because that type of innovation requires community. Community is essential to progress in software and in this complex scientific work. So you really need to do it in groups, and people team up. We hear a lot about tech startups, but work of this type really benefits from a community. And we looked around and said, we're all going down to New York Tech Meetup, but there's such a growing community here in the Hudson Valley that we should start our own tech meetup. I wonder if that would work. Because we know there's people out there, but we sort of don't know where they are, really. And sometimes we try to hire somebody, and it takes a little while to find them. So we started that, and we just celebrated our first birthday. We have 500 members now. Every month we get 50 to 90 people come out and tell us how grateful they are that we're giving them this opportunity to connect with each other and to work on projects. People are getting hired. I think in the time that we've done this, we're probably responsible for connecting at least a dozen people with potential employers, and new companies are coming out of it as well. It's really taken off, and from the beginning, RUPCO has helped with that process. I first became acquainted with Kevin O'Connor and RUPCO because of the O Positive Festival, which I'm involved with. I'm the director of technology there, and RUPCO donated space for the clinic for the O Positive Festival, and it's done that from the very beginning. I think maybe it wouldn't even have happened if that space hadn't been available. So when Hudson Valley Tech Meetup was conceived, I thought, I'm going to talk to Kevin O'Connor about this and see if there's a possibility of having space there where we can meet. And he said, this sounds cool, this sounds great, and RUPCO supports community. So from the very beginning, we've been meeting in that space. And then a few months ago, it came up that there was the possibility of this exciting new project here in Midtown Kingston. And one of the things we've been talking about in the tech community, because now this conversation has grown regionally, right? There are people that want to create the tech ecosystem of the Hudson Valley, and there's a lot of people that are involved in it. And one of the things that we're really missing is a combination of co-working space and incubator space. Again, this is the type of space that a community of people can work in, that has access to good internet, and that businesses can start up and form in. I know personally that these businesses are moving to the area. One of our members, David Schopfer, owns a company called Anchor ID. They have a world-changing password replacement technology. They're headquartered here in Kingston. At Hudson Valley Tech Meetup, they met the Ulster County Economic Development Alliance, which is now talking to them about the Startup New York benefits that are accessible to them because they live here. And it's companies like that need a space like this. They're coming here because they want that walkable, livable city. They want the quality of life that comes with living in the Hudson Valley. And I believe that we really need to support them with things like Hudson Valley Tech Meetup and infrastructure like fiber optics and workspace like what Kevin is planning here. So if this building goes through, I just want to let you all know that it's really very meaningful to the growth of the tech economy, and we're really excited to be a part of it. And we've got 500 plus members that are excited about it as well. And it's part of a plan. I think it's a plan that is succeeding in terms of the community development that's happening here, and this idea of Kingston as a walkable city, and the tech community is excited to be a part of it. So thanks, Kevin, for taking this on. We're excited to see it happen.
Great. Thank you, Cal. Thanks a lot. In my hand is okay, the work that they're doing, and to see it happening. I mean, you know, heretofore, any type of discussion about tech always went out to Tech City. No one ever talked about bringing technology or this kind of thing into Midtown. So you're going to see a little bit more about the design when Scott comes back up, but this combination of a mixed-use, mixed-income building in Midtown with great design, we're trying to become perhaps the first net zero for living building by combining geothermal and solar on this site, and just really, you know, we think it's a stellar project, and you know, we're proposing to build a mixed-use building in Midtown in the core of the city. Just a moment on the funding opportunities that we see here. Must be me.
No, just got to turn it.
Okay. So, you know, this year, the New York State received a $5 billion settlement, and Governor Cuomo has announced an upstate revitalization initiative competition, and there's $1.5 billion available for communities in the upstate region, and there's 7 regions that can compete. Buffalo has been excluded, New York and Long Island has been excluded, so there's 7 regions left, 3 of which will win $500 million. And so this is the Upstate Revitalization Initiative, and the applications are due in October. The Mid-Hudson region is anxious to compete. Any projects that are looking to perhaps gain any of these funds must apply this summer through the combined funding application process, with a deadline of July 31st. And so it's our hope that we can tell a story about, we certainly won't have you know, we won't be done in terms of approvals, zoning change, or seeker, or planning, or any of that, but we hope to be able to tell a story that shows that there's support in this community for this type of project, that this project is fundable and can happen, and that we can combine some real civic needs and uses that are creative for the civic space with housing that's needed. And you know, this money has already been appropriated. It's already been decided to be spent. It's already been decided on what kinds of activities it will spend it on. These things have already been decided. And we just believe that we should be, you know, stepping up to the plate and looking for good ideas and good projects, and trying to bring that money here to Kingston. Because if it doesn't come here, it's going to someplace else. It's going to go to Rochester or Binghamton or someplace else in the state. And unfortunately, you know, sometimes the money can't just go for anything that we want. It has specific uses. And so it's a real opportunity. There's a real timeline. And we don't want to, we want people to be aware that that's part of what's driving our process. You know, in terms of the building, we were pleased to see the Ulster County Planning Board already weigh in and state that the building is, you know, very much in keeping from their viewpoint with where the city's latest comprehensive plan process is going, and it meets several categories. We have a white paper that we've expanded tonight that's available that quotes the letter that the Ulster County Planning Board has provided to the city. You know, affordable housing, as Scott mentioned, you know, he was a candidate for much of his early career. It's about right-sizing the cost of housing so that people are paying the right amount towards their rent before their home, and they have enough money left over, enough disposable income to take care of the rest of life's needs, like food and clothing, and transportation, and medical, and some entertainment. And maybe you can even take your kid out to a movie because you got a little money left over after you pay for everything. That's what affordable housing is about. And we can target it to different levels. And trust me, there is need at all levels. We're not serving the homeless well enough. We're not serving people with special needs well enough. We're not serving our frail elderly well We're not serving starter families, attracting young millennials. Across the board, across the spectrum, we have great need in housing. In our white paper, we quote again the Tri-County Housing, that study that was done in 2009. Jeffrey Carr and his economy firm from Vermont. Jeffrey is a local. He grew up in the town of Ulster. He did a study for the Tri-County. Every municipality in Dutchess, Ulster, and Orange. And based on the need assessment done by an economist, not a houser, showed that for the year 2015, the affordability gap for rental housing alone in the city of Kingston was such that to meet the need, we need to build 900 units of new rental housing in this city alone by 2015. We have built, other than the 55 units coming online tomorrow at the Lace Mill, I know of no other units. So we're just a drop in the bucket in terms of meeting the need. So, in terms of who lives here, on the income side, we have units that are predominantly at 60% of the county median. The county median is about $75,000. That means half of the folks in Ulster County make more than that, half make less, so that's the median for a family of 4. All the units at the Lace Mill are at this 60% level, so families in the 1 to 4 units are making between $31,000 to $45,000 per year, and those numbers will rise. And that income test, once again, is only on the day that they move in. There's no income restriction after they move in. Their income can go to whatever, but they can remain in this housing, and that's important, because we don't want to be tied to anything that's holding down people's incomes. It's a move-in requirement. At those numbers, we're reaching 42% of all city residents earn that income. And 68% of the residents in the census tract where the bowling alley is today. We've also proposed to have at least 15% of the units for incomes up to 90% of the median. And those incomes for families of 1 to 4 households are $47,000 to $67,000. And these numbers are in the white paper. And if we are able to do that, then we're reaching, I think as Scott said, 62%, or nearly 2/3 of all city residents by targeting those incomes. Tomorrow, the first of the folks are moving into the Lace Mill. We have 17 units already leased up. People have keys, and they'll be moving in starting tomorrow and through the weekend. We're very excited. On August 14th, we'll have a block party. The building will be open all day long, 11 to 7. We're giving tours. There'll be a ceremony at 1. We've invited local businesses to participate. We'll have food. We'll have music. Don Hall from M&A Manufacturing, I told you guys last time I was here, is right across the street. And when I talked to Don about the block party, as we're calling it, I said, Don, do you want to participate? He said, absolutely. I said, what are you going to do? He said, when I have a booth, I have jobs. I want to hire your residents at Lace Mill. I said, great, you can come. I think that people have also mentioned, and I want to emphasize one last time, that much of the commercial property on Broadway is unfortunately too much of it is vacant, and we realize that. So 2 things. One is that we've designed space that is not meant to compete with retail space, but rather to fulfill the needs of identified civic needs, and we think that's important. And secondly, the only way that we're going to find some success, we believe, at RUPCO, in our Broadway quarters, in our core downtowns, is to bring more housing. This city was built for far more than 23,000 people that live here today. We've lost tremendous population, as a number of the cities in the Hudson Valley have. It's built for greater population, and we're going to support the Broadway corridor. We need housing density. We need more people living here. We need a healthier market with a greater vacancy. In the United States today, homeownership rates are down fully 5% from where they were just 7 years ago. The new millennial young kids, 22 to 34, they're coming out with bigger college debt than ever. They're not necessarily always interested in buying homes because of the debt, because of their mobility. They move jobs quicker. Rental housing is integral and important. It always has been, but even more so today. It's an important part of our housing. I talked to a family that just sold a Victorian in uptown Kingston, and they wanted to stay in Kingston. They had a house for sale for a long time. It didn't sell. Someone finally came along, made an offer. They decided to sell. There was no rentals whatsoever that they could find or look to. And we see that this building will serve young people on their way up, and perhaps some people that are looking to downsize as well. So with that, I'd like to have Scott come back up and take us through the slides so you can see the type of design that we're moving towards, and thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Just want to echo one point that Kevin just made, and that is you need people to live in the urban core for those businesses to survive. When I first started our practice, we were in Uptown Kingston. It was fantastic. You could walk out of the office, go to any number of coffee shops, and for lunch, go to the post office. We moved to Midtown. It was a little bit more of a challenge. And we frequent the Midtown eateries, but it's a little bit more of a challenge. And you look around, you see all these little storefronts. You say, that would be a great coffee shop. That would make a great bakery. And all we need are more people that are there after 5 o'clock. And over the last 5 or 6 years, we've seen more people after 5 o'clock. When we bought the building, you could not live on the upper floors along the commercial corridor. I had to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals and get a variance to live on the upper floor in that district. Since then, the city has changed the zoning so that you can live on upper floors, but there are challenges. Many of those buildings aren't easy to convert to apartments legally, because you have to put in sprinkler systems and other impediments. But a project like this, think about 80 more people, 75, 80 more people, and what that means to a coffee shop opportunity, what that means to UPAC. People have said that when there's a UPAC event, that folks scurry to their cars after the event. That's not always true. You can't get a seat at Little Italy before and after, an event. And we're right there, and it's turning. And so I just want to echo that as a resident stakeholder in Midtown. That point. This is City of Kingston zoning map. All of this area along the Broadway corridor is commercial, C2. From tip to toe. This is the project site, Mid-City Lanes. It's zoned O2. We have made a request to move the C2 zoning boundary to allow for the commercial use there. This move would correct a flaw or an error, in my view, in the zoning ordinance. If you look at what's allowed in the O2, it's not a viable option. David Ferraro is here tonight, and he can get up and confirm this. They've had the property on the market for 10 years. And they closed last year. They haven't had any buyers. They've had multiple brokers. It wasn't moving. The zoning wasn't right. Look at the rest of the Broadway corridor. It's all commercial. So that is one part of our application before the board. Request to rezone that property, to properly zone that property. You see the UPAC here, Broadway corridor, Greenkill, Iwo Jima, and Cedar Street. This is Dunkin' Donuts here, Japanese restaurant here. In green, you see the limits of the property. View of the bowling alley from Cedar to Iwo Jima. Another view looking back towards Broadway. View from the Dunkin' Donuts parking lot. View from Broadway and Cornell. Recent project that our firm had the opportunity to participate in. Joe Deegan and Bob Ryan purchased this building. Many of the other local real estate folks was out taking pictures for this presentation 2 months ago. These folks just fell into my camera lens, but I think it's appropriate to pause on this picture because the city of Kingston is embarking on a serious effort to increase pedestrian access and bicycle access along the Broadway corridor. Is Greg still here? Greg Swansea was here a while ago. They are actively working on that project with real funds, engineers and planners working on that project. Existing site plan, proposed site plan has the building situated to the street line at Cedar Street, which is consistent with the Midtown design guidelines. Many project developers will situate a building, plunk it down in the middle of the site, surrounded by parking. That's inconsistent with how cities have developed over time. It's also inconsistent with creating a walkable community. Parking to the rear of Greenkill, maintaining the street line on Cedar Street. View from Cornell. Superimposed this photo simulation, the project here. Today, as proposed. Current, as proposed. You'll notice that rather than appearing as one building, the design seeks to respond to the urban fabric, whereby we have multiple buildings connected with a party wall treatment. Today, as proposed. Now, these are just early 3D conceptual models. We're not at the point in saying that this is a beige brick and that's a darker colored brick. These are massing studies that we're using to study the shadows and how the building fits within the context of the neighborhood. At subsequent planning board meetings, we'll be getting into what the finishes are, bringing material samples. Again, for the context here, Broadway, Greenkill, municipal parking lot, post office, and the Lace Mills project here. We feel like the two projects here, along with the efforts that the city is undertaking right now to come up with a design for this Cornell Street connector to Broadway and UPAC and an arts district, will act as an important anchor for the development or redevelopment in Midtown. I want to just talk about this area in here. Some amazing housing stock in Midtown, in here. And I've met a couple of people who said, look at all those beautiful buildings. Why doesn't anybody buy them? And the answer that most people will respond is, well, we're not sure yet. We're not sure about Kingston and the taxes, and there's just it could turn, it could go the wrong way. We think something's happening. It'd be nice to buy a home there. One of my employees went through the RUPCO first home buyer program. And there are a lot of young people that I think would be perfect for repopulating this area. Getting rid of some of the invisible landlords, the invisible slumlords that own these properties in shadow LLCs. But it's not going to happen until this area is stabilized. And a project like this will help to make that coffee shop viable, help to make the neighborhood safer, have more people walking around in the evening. This photo was taken about 2 months ago If you drive by today, you'll see the landscaping is in, the sod is in, the building is lit at night, a building that was boarded up for roughly 25 years. A building that RUPCO sought out a historic designation, individually requested that this building be individually listed on the state and national register, which it was. Plans for the Cedar Street project include roughly 15,000 square feet of commercial space on the ground floor, apartments on the upper floors, roughly 61 apartments, and an elevated urban park. A gesture towards the High Line project, which I'm sure most of you know about. An opportunity to create needed parking, but also green space that'll make the community livable, have safe urban gardens in the air. View of the elevated park. Again, this is just conceptual at this point. Our landscape architect will be developing plans for the gardens, and we'll be submitting full documentation on that in the coming months as we wend our way through the site plan review process. Roughly 5,000 square feet of urban park with access to the ground for the public, elevator access through the core of the building. It'll be fully handicapped accessible. As Kevin touched on earlier, this looks to be the greenest building in Kingston, net zero for living, reducing stormwater runoff on the property, using existing infrastructure. The site is currently almost 100% impervious. We have Bernier and Marios working on the plans to hit the highest target possible. We're talking about rainwater harvesting to use for our landscaping on site. It's a lofty goal to hit net zero. Our consultants are the best in the country. The Building Science Corporation out of Boston, the principals of which have authored countless books and papers about how to do this and how to do it right. Reducing a project that reduces carbon footprint. They don't come along like this very often. If you open up Architectural Record, you'll see that there's a project every month in there. And this is a significant project, world-class scale of aspirations right here in Kingston. 3D model showing the context of the adjacent buildings, Broadway, tracks here. Our family lives here, the former Canfield Supply warehouse. Street view, UPAC on the left. Preliminary elevation view with a significant entrance for the Center for Creative Education, entrance for the apartments. See here, PV, solar panels in the parking area, covering the parking, reducing the heat island effect that you get when you have a sea of asphalt, and also creating electricity to help offset whatever energy demand the building has. We have elevation view here. Aerial view of a 3D computer-generated model that we're working on and continue to develop. The entire roof with solar panels. The panels out here in the parking lot again. Broadway. You see the proximity to UPAC.
Scott. Just a couple of points. I've asked Scott to reserve a section of the roof for Skydeck. So to have an open area on the roof where we could have camping affairs for residents or for patrons of UPAC or for any group that would like to have that. I don't think we currently have that. The views are sort of nice, so I think having a small section of the roof up there for that. Again, I think, some have talked about the barbell of Kingston being uptown and downtown, with Midtown being in between. And, we see a different barbell that Scott mentioned. It's the new barbell of the Cornell Street corridor, which has received $250,000 for UPAC and for the Lace Mill and for the corridor itself from Central Hudson recently to restore that corridor. But now with the Lace Mill on the one end, we have the shirt factory, a couple of other artist workload spaces that Mike Piazza has developed, some senior housing being proposed in the middle, and now with this proposal on the other end. Again, we think that all of the cities, and we're working in a number of different areas, in the Hudson Valley right now are sort of on the upward. I think there's new people are coming, and I think it's positive. I think I've been at this for about 27 years, and it's the most positive that I felt about the future of some of our Hudson River cities to realign. I'm so excited by meeting Kale and seeing for the first time new ways for people who are working out of their homes and in different ways to come to and be part of the economic fabric up here. For too long, we seem to want to attract back the IBMs or the big plants and just refill Tech City. We've all seen it. That just hasn't occurred for us. So to see a glimpse of how the new economies might work, to see all the arts-related activity that's occurring in this city. One of the great joys, I always tell the story of doing the Lace Mill. If you had asked me 5 years ago, is there manufacturing going on in Midtown Kingston, I would say, I don't think so. Go my way a long time ago. But then I met Richard Frulis at Art Paint, and it's been there now for 20 years, making caustic paint, selling it worldwide. And Jim and Ann Bailey Pottery, making kilns for pottery and selling to all the top colleges and universities in the country. And now they have Monster Inc. come in and create their studios to do some sets and props, to serve their great thing out in the sofas and maybe to knock on Broadway's door. And the success of Color Page, what they're doing, to meet Don Hall at MG Manufacturing. He used to make butcher block furniture. That's what I used to know them for. And when he gave me a tour of his facility, he showed me what they're making today. They're making steel trays, stands, if you will, to receive meat slicers. And they're the most innovative, strong, creative trays that a meat slicer can sit on. And he's selling to all the top grocery chains in the country. And he couldn't be any prouder of the work that's going on in that building. So to meet all of these folks, to see that kind of manufacturing, and be part of something that we think can be part of the economic uplift for this community is indeed very exciting. So with that, I think we'll stop there. Turn it back.
All right, so thank you, Kevin, and Scott, Kale. I also want to introduce some of the other members of the RUPCO team here. We have Chuck Snyder and Guy Kemp. We also have Michael Moriello, who is their counsel. I did mention at the beginning of the presentation that if time permits, we will have an opportunity to have some questions. Again, there's going to be a public hearing at our next meeting on July 13th, but I think we do have some time for questions. Does anybody? Yes, sir.
Well, hi. My name is Billy Lennon. I live on Franklin Street for 11 years, right in the heart of Midtown. I'm a big fan of RUPCO. I live 3 doors up from the petite house that RUPCO did. It's such a beautiful idea. I'd like to see the young firemen and the retail clerk own their place, not rent. There was a lot of references to home ownership and ownership. It was crossing over with the word rental. I'd like to see the young firemen, the retail clerk, with that beautiful thing that you're doing, to own their place. Okay, second, door number 2. I'd like to see super diversity, much more 2 bedrooms, where you could have the new American family, maybe a gay couple with a child, a single mother and a child, a grandmother bringing up her grandchildren. I'd like to see a lot more 2 bedrooms, and I'd like to see the people own their place. And I just live 3 blocks away.
You want to talk about it all, or?
I just want to mention one thing. More 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms, or more 2 bedrooms and 1 bedrooms?
When you know, for super diversity is where you can have, now, you know, the young professional is wonderful. I used to be one. I lived in a 1 bedroom. But for super diversity, I'd like to see the 2, and if you think 3 bedrooms.
Sure. Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Of course, when I started, we thought about 3 and 4 bedrooms. And of course, you know, household composition is changing, household size is shrinking. We know that. So 1 and 2s are really, I think, the rental market where most of the demand is going forward. You know, look, we love to do historic preservation. We love to do home ownership. We talked about housing being a broad continuum. This particular project, the bowling alley, is for rental housing, which we think is a part of an urban mixed housing. But I would be remiss if we didn't, you know, remind folks that we've brought and partnered with the City of Kingston right now 2 consecutive home grants, federal dollars to help people, first-time homebuyers, buy homes exclusively here in the City of Kingston. There's still quite a bit of money available. The money can go for down payment, closing costs, and rehab of the home for the first-time homebuyer. There's still affordable housing stock in Midtown Kingston. Rates are at the lowest that they've ever been. Fixed rates, 30-year fixed rates in our lifetime, they're still down. This is a good buying opportunity, and there's grant money. You know, it costs $10,000 minimum in cash to buy a house today. The closing costs, down payment requirements. And so we have grant money, and we're granting up to $25,000 or $30,000 to families and households who are buying their first home in the City of Kingston. There's money available. We call RUPCO, City Office of Community Development, and that's available right now. We partner with the city to bring 2 consecutive grants, and we plan to bring more. Of course, the home dollars were just zeroed out, basically, by the Senate in the recent T-HUD bill, and that's the money we've been using, so we hope that that gets restored, because it's done some really good work, particularly towards home ownership here in Kingston and across the country.
I feel like Phil Donnie. I don't miss one of these microphones.
Hi, my name is Daniel Cantor. I live on Clinton Avenue in Midtown, pretty close to this project. I don't want to see this project become a glorified housing project, particularly when we sort of know in urban planning that the best way to create affordable housing is to integrate it into existing mixed-income neighborhoods, which we have, and we have housing. So I don't really understand kind of the urgency of this project, but to me, living in the neighborhood, the biggest thing that I see and the biggest thing I hear from, I'm running for alderman by the way, so I hear from a lot of people, is the issue of condemned, vacant, derelict houses that are just sitting there and could be saved and really wouldn't need a lot of money. And then to see a project like this where I guess the proposed budget is somewhere around $20 million, it's a pretty big chunk of change considering how much most of those houses would really need just to get them back to livable conditions. So that's question number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. My other question is, like, has there been any kind of like financial viability study for the commercial businesses that are proposed to go in these spaces? Because as you mentioned in the presentation, like, you know, there's tons of vacant storefronts and vacant lots all along Broadway. There's vacant storefronts even in Uptown, which has, you know, seen a lot of change even just in the past couple of years. So I'm sort of wondering, on a street that really is historically residential, you know, what is there a projected viability for businesses opening on a low traffic residential street that could do any better than any of these buildings on Broadway or Uptown where there's high traffic and even those can't seem to survive?
Well, I guess what I'd like to do, since you had 8 questions, is invite you to submit them to in writing and promise you that we will respond